Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing something different. For my top 25, I'm doing top 25 retailers of all time. Now, to make the list, it didn't necessarily have to be a specialty shop, but it basically had to have a cash register selling merchandise off the shelf. And this will mostly include box stores or specialty shops, all chains, obviously, none of that locals. But basically, the only criteria is they have to have a cash register and they sell items off the shelf. That's basically the criteria. So we'll start with number 25. Office Max. I put Office Max on the list, and I'm not even sure if they're still around. Some of these retailers do not exist anymore. Excuse me. Ooh, a little acid reflux, not good. Anyways, but when they were a thing, Office Max was basically a place for office stuff. So they had a whole section of office furniture. You could buy computer desks or bookshelves or, things like that. Gamer chairs, computer chairs, things like that. But they also sold, paper products and, again, office supplies, like supplies. Like printer paper and fancy pens and, notebooks and paper clips, etc. Folders, binders, things like that. But they also sold office-related electronics, usually computers, laptops, and accessories and components. So they would sell like RAM chips and hard drives and monitors and stuff like that, but also pre-built computers, boxed computers, and stuff like that. Towards the end, most of it was just laptops and like flash drives, and then I don't know if they ever got into tablets or cell phones or not, because our Office Max ended up going out of business a few years ago. I don't know if there's one here in town or not. I haven't been looking for it, but I haven't had any reason to. But Office Max was a good place where if you had questions about computers, you could go, and the staff were usually pretty knowledgeable, although not always. I don't think it was a prerequisite to work there. And they also had the print section in the back where you could take your flash drive or SD card or whatever, and you could get stuff printed, or photocopied or whatever. Number 24 is Goodwill. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of their business, but to me, they're the least offensive of your thrift store chains. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're the least offensive because unlike the Salvation Army, who makes it a point that trans people are scum and they don't want us, they don't want our business, and they don't want to help us or have anything to do with us, and they give money to our political enemies, Goodwill is just, as far as a business goes, they're kind of scummy, but they're not as scummy as, Salvation Army or some of the other ones. So as a thrift store, it's basically free for all. It's whatever they get donated. They could have housewares, they could have furniture, they could have lawn equipment, lawnmowers, or they could have like weed whackers or fucking, whatever. You never know what you're gonna. They also sell clothes and furniture and stuff, but you never know what you're gonna find at the Goodwill. Number 23 is Big Lots. What I like about Big Lots is they're basically kind of, I guess, like an outlet type store or an overflow store. So when the other stores, the dollar stores, Walmart, Target, etc., can't sell something on clearance and it's just taking up shelf space, instead of sending it back to the warehouse, or to the manufacturer or whatever, sometimes they sell it at a discount to Big Lots, and then they sell the shit, at a discounted price. Um, it's similar to Goodwill, and it's a free-for-all, anything goes. You never know what you're going to find, but it's like, packaged stuff, like, unopened stuff. Whereas Goodwill is just used junk. Now, number 22 is a relatively new entry in the market, as far as I know. It is very similar to Big Lots. It's called Five Below. They're also similar to a dollar store in that it's called Five Below because everything in this store is $5 or below. Allegedly. Now, I was not impressed by the offering at our local Five Below where I lived at the time where we had one. So you're saying if you're not impressed, why did they make the list? Well, because up the street in the next town over, their Five Below was awesome. And it felt like to me, hey, if every Five Below was like this one, this is a damn good store. I think ours, the one we had closest to us, was just, it's a smaller town, so it was like, less, I guess, a lesser market. Number 21 is Buc-ee's. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not a department store. Well, no, neither is Goodwill. But Buc-ee's is a retailer, see? They are sort of like a department store. They do sell a lot of the stuff you'll find at a department store. But they're also a truck stop, a travel center. But they sell a lot of unique, like, snack items. Like, branded flavors of snacks that you're not going to find anywhere else. So, like, your normal gas station is going to have, like, your Cheetos, and then your Cheetos Puffs, and then your Red Hot Cheetos. But, like, Buc-ee's is going to, above and beyond, they're going to sell, like, strawberry-flavored Cheetos and banana-flavored Cheetos. I'm making these up, but you get the point. They're going to sell the exotic stuff that you're not going to find at your local gas station. Plus, they got fancy popcorns and, really nice jerky and other stuff. It's basically a Walmart dressed up like a gas station. More or less. Number 20, rest in peace, Toys R Us, unless you're in Canada, in which case, good for you. Toys R Us was a toy superstore that I've honestly only ever been inside one time in my entire life. But that one day was magical, and I would have loved to go back, but it was a 3-hour drive one way to get there, so obviously I couldn't shop there very often. But if I had lived closer to it, I would have definitely shopped there more than I did. They kind of lose points for being out of the way, but when you did get to go to Toys R Us, it was a treat. Number 19 is the Buckle. Now, they're not as nice as, like, some of your other, clothing stores. But the Buckle, it's not your fashionable attire. You're not going there to get the stuff the stars are wearing. Or what you see in movies. It's your regular everyday clothes. But they have a better selection of clothes and a better quality of clothing than your standard Target or Walmart. More fairly priced for what you get than Target. Target overcharges for the shit you get there. At least in terms of clothes. Target has nice clothes, nicer clothes than Walmart, but they're too expensive. They're not fair on their prices. But now the Buckle is more expensive than Target still, but you're getting quality that matches the price. If you can afford it. And they're not as expensive as some of your other clothing stores. So they're relatively accessible. Number 18 is Spencer's Gifts. Now, I got a whole video coming on Spencer's Gifts. Don't worry, it's coming. The thing I like about Spencer's Gifts is I'm a witch. I'm a pagan. And I'm into witchy things and horror things. And sometimes you can get witchy supplies at Spencer's Gifts. But also, I like horror movies. And you can get horror movie posters and action figures of horror movie characters. They carry or they used to, I should say, the Todd McFarlane Movie Monster line. And sometimes they sell premium action figures of, horror movie characters and stuff like that. So Spencer's Gifts is kind of a neat store. A little pricey, I'll admit, but it's usually good stuff. It's usually worth it. Also, they've got a lot of gag gifts, which I'm not there for. I'm not into that. And some adult gifts too, which I'm also not into. Number 17 is Hot Topic, which is just a notch above Spencer's Gifts, but basically the same thing. I'm not there for the goth clothing, obviously. See my earrings? I'm not very goth. But I am, into witchy and horror stuff. But Hot Topic also is a good place to look for horror movie posters and action figure posters, but also a good place to get band posters as well, especially if you're into metal or hip hop, gangster rap, stuff like that. Number 16, also a dead retailer, no longer in business, but they make the list because when they were the shit. Hastings. I still cry myself to sleep some nights missing Hastings. God damn it, I miss Hastings. Hastings was like the greatest. It should be number one. But partially because they went out of business, but also partially because they were a specialty shop. They were a music store, basically. So they sold musical instruments and musical related or adjacent items. So they also sold CDs and audio cassettes and vinyl records and things like that. But they also rented movies, which was weird, but they did. They rented VHS back in the day and then DVD, and then they went out of business. Eek. But they were affordable video rentals, but also affordable CDs because, they're new CDs, not so much. But they sold used CDs up until the very end. And they also sold comic books and a little bit of everything else. And I miss Hastings so much. I wish somebody would bring it back to life somehow, some way. How, some of these dead retailers are getting a second chance at life. I'd like to see Hastings get a second chance. Although towards the end, they were basically a hot topic. At our Hastings shut down, and the big store and moved into the mall, and it was basically a hot topic at that point. And it was like, no thanks, I'm not interested. So yeah, they deserved to go out of business at that point. It was because they made bad decisions, but it is what it is. Number 15 is Walden Books. Now, I'm pretty sure they're also no longer in business, but I liked Walden Books because they were in the mall. And while they did sell a lot of mainstream stuff because, they were in the mall, they were also really good at selling, lesser known stuff. They were also really good about ordering books. If you asked them, if you went in and they didn't have something, they would order it for you, or if something came in and you wanted it but you didn't have the money today, they'd hold it for you for a little bit. So I miss Walden Books. Ouch. Shit, that hurt. Number 14 is 7-Eleven. I know it's just a convenience store, but it's like the convenience store to be all convenience stores. Yeah, you're there for the slushies or Slurpees or whatever they're called. Which are damn good drinks, by the way. 7-Eleven, awesome. But they also have, really good junk food, cooked food. You can get, most gas stations you can get a hot dog on a roller, or one of those tornadoes or whatever. You can get those at 7-Eleven as well, but you can also get, cheeseburgers. You can get chicken wings. You can get slices of pizza. You can get a bucket of chicken. You can get all kinds of stuff. And you can get a chili dog, because they're not just going to sell you a hot dog. They got a little kiosk thingy that dispenses cheese and chili. Cheese for your nachos, which they sell, or chili, either for your nachos or your chili cheese dog, which is what I was there for. And also, they tend to have a better selection of soda pops and energy drinks than your average gas station. Also, they have more variety in the fountain. They tend to have more fountain drink flavors than most of your normal gas stations as well. I say tend to, not always. If they have like a Coke freestyle machine, that's a whole nother ball game. Excuse me. Number 13 is another retailer that no longer exists that I shopped at a lot because I lived in smaller towns. And this was big in small towns. What I mean by that is they exclusively built stores in small towns. They didn't exist in the big towns. So if you lived in a big suburb or a city, you probably never heard of this store. It was called Shopko. What is Shopko? Well, if you've ever been inside of a Kmart, that's all it is. It's a Kmart, but it's a different company doing the same thing Kmart does. That's all Shopko is. It's just your generic department store. That's all it is. It's a box store. Smaller scale Walmart. You know, no grocery store, no automotive department. Just a regular old everyday department store. Like a Kmart. I spent a lot of time shopping at Shopko. And yes, I worked at a Shopko at once upon a time. Moving on. Number 12, I know it belongs on the list, and it fits this spot more because of my memories and what it was in the past, obviously, but they're still around. So, they're still a good place to shop. They're just not what they once were. But number 12 is GameStop. Now, if you're going to GameStop for video games, don't. If you find them there, you're not going to find the one you're looking for, or you're going to end up paying too much for it. So they're not really the go-to video game store today that they were in yesteryear. Now, when they were a video game store, they were the shit. They were the place to go, because if a video game did exist, they had it. And if they didn't, they could get it. But they're still really good. Like I said, I like to collect toys and action figures and Funko Pops. They're still really good at selling collectibles, which is most of their business now. So they're a good place to go to get, you know, like the more specialty collectibles. The action figures you're not going to find at Walmart or Target. So they're still good for that. And yeah, they're really good for Funko Pops. They're basically a Funko Pop store at this point that also sells action figures and some video games. They're still good, though. I mean, heck, a Funko Pop store or an action figure store is still a good store as far as I'm concerned. Number 11 is KB Toys, another one that is out of business. Now, I know what you're doing. You're typing away in the comments. You're screaming at the keyboard. Or you're rolling your eyes. But look, I didn't have Toys R Us. Like I said, I only went to them the one time. And while it was a glorious experience that one time I got to go, I had a KB Toy in my town at my local mall. I could go to KB Toys regularly. I could shop there all the time. So to me, that makes them a little bit better than Toys R Us because to me, they were more accessible. Not as big as a Toys R Us, obviously, not as much variety. KB Toys usually sold the same toy lines that you were going to find at Walmart or Target or Kmart or whatever, Shopko, whatever. But they usually had more variety than you'd find at those average retailers. You know, whereas Walmart or Kmart or whatever would have 10 or 12 Transformers to choose from, KB Toys would have 30 to 40 different Transformers to choose from. They had more variety. They had deeper cuts. You know what I mean? And yeah, their figures were usually $2 or $3 more expensive than their Walmart or Kmart or whatever counterpart, their department store counterpart. But it was worth it because you could find figures or toys at KB that you couldn't find at the department stores. Number 10 is Barnes & Noble. Now, like Walden Books, they're a really good book retailer. Um, they've pretty much replaced, obviously, Walden Books because Walden Books went out of business and Barnes & Noble is still around. And you can usually find them in the same places you would have found a Walden Books anyways. They're usually close to your shopping mall, unless you don't have a shopping mall. In which case, they're in the retail shopping center where your mall would have been had your city had a mall. Or maybe your mall used to be before it got turned into a strip mall. I don't know, whatever. Barnes & Noble are also really good about selling comic books and manga, as well as role-playing games, and not just Dungeons & Dragons. They also sell a good variety of role-playing games. So Barnes & Noble is a good place to go to get your RPG fix, which is usually what I'm there for, D&D books or comic books. Number 9, R.I.P., another one that no longer exists, is Sam Goody. Now, Sam Goody was similar to Hastings on the retail side, at least on the media side. They mostly sold VHS, DVDs, CDs, cassette tapes, etc. They were that type of store. But whereas Sam Goody was better than some of those other video rental, or not rental, but video stores, music stores, is one, they had deeper catalogs. Hastings had everything you could want, but usually it was used and it wasn't always in stock. They usually have a little placeholder that would say, oh yeah, here's where we keep, Beastie Boys' Ill Communication, but we're sold out of Ill Communication right now, and you never know when it's coming in because they sell used CDs, so it might not ever come back. Whereas Sam Goody only sold new and then pre-sale, not pre-sale, but not pre-owned, but clearance and discounted stuff from time to time. But Sam Goody was also really good about selling anime and horror stuff. They were really good about that. Sam Goody also sold video games, which also, again, Hastings did. But I just liked Sam Goody a little bit better because they just were a little better layout. They didn't stick around as long as Hastings. Hastings pretty much replaced them. But when they were around, they were, the go-to place to get obscure horror, anime, or, even concert videos or stuff that, you might not find at Hastings. Because, like I said, Hastings usually sold used products, so it wasn't, it was a crapshoot what you were going to get. Whereas you could almost guarantee Sam Goody had it. A little bit on the pricey side, but it was still worth it. Especially during their going out of business sales. You could fill your shopping cart with stuff when they were going out of business, which I did. Also, it was an atmosphere, it was just like, it was in the mall. Number 8 is another one that is more resting on their laurels of the past, so it's, my memories of shopping there. But they're actually still more or less what they were when I used to shop there. I say more or less because they're not quite the same, but the market has changed. So my needs are no longer met there necessarily. But I still pop in from time to time whenever I need to. And I'm obviously talking about Best Buy. Best Buy is a big box electronics and computer store, but they're also a mobile store, so they sell cell phones and tablets and accessories. But they also sell electronic, appliances and stuff, so you can get, refrigerators and microwaves, stuff like that, coffee makers, Keurigs, stuff like that. Smart devices as well. But you can also get, TVs and computers and monitors and RAM chips and, GPUs, etc., computer components and stuff like that. And Best Buy is also kind of cool because they've got the Geek Squad in there. So they're a good, tech support group, And Best Buy employees are a lot more knowledgeable than your average electronics store employee. So they know their stuff by and large. Number 7 is JCPenney. Now, JCPenney makes the list because this is where you go to do your Christmas shopping. JCPenney is like, you got to buy gifts for the family. You got to buy clothes. You know, you got to pick out the clothes that your mom's going to buy you, or your aunt or grandma or whatever. But JCPenney was also similar to the Buckle in that it's more or less your regular everyday clothes. But they have a really good variety, a good selection of clothes, and they actually have pretty fair prices, all things considered. I've bought a lot of clothes at JCPenney over the years. They're pretty nice for the price, so they're not just like, you know, jeans and t-shirts. You know what I mean? Number 6 is Macy's. Macy's is a step above JCPenney. What I liked about Macy's was this is where you're going to go to get the nicer stuff. This is where you're buying your prom dress. This is where you're buying you got to have something for somebody's, you know, golden or silver anniversary, or you're attending a wedding or whatever. Macy's is going to have the nicer clothes, or you have to go to a business meeting or work function, or, your company holiday party or whatever. Also, Macy's also, they also had, like, really good, like, no, more expensive, but they had really good selection on, like, jewelry and makeup and stuff like that. You could find stuff at Macy's the other stores didn't sell. Now, they were more expensive, so you didn't shop there very often, but when you did, you knew you were going there with a purpose. It was to get quality product, and you were going to get quality product. Number 5 is Sears. Now, Sears, if you ever watched any of the Tim Allen specials, Men Are Pigs or Rewires America or whatever, his stand-up comedy specials, this is where the men would hang out. Sears is basically the male counterpart, more or less, to JCPenney. You know, mom shopped at JCPenney, dad shopped at Sears. No, I'm mostly talking in jest, but obviously Sears was more of a department store with an emphasis on tools and home electronics, which is what I was there for. Sears had a pretty good video game selection compared to its competition for the most part. We also shopped at Sears pretty regularly because, Dad was always looking for tools and stuff because my dad was a mechanic. And, they sold, like, lawnmowers and weed whackers and stuff like that. They also sold, like, regular tools and power tools and stuff like that. Sears was basically, kind of like a smaller scale Lowe's, but without the, like, home, without, like, the lumber and, like, doors and windows and, bathtubs and plumbing and stuff. Number 4, I just did a video on last week or a couple days ago or whatever. Radio Shack. Radio Shack was the shit back when it was the shit, before it turned into shit. But I still rank them high on the list because I was in Radio Shack almost every day or every other day. I was going to Radio Shack every chance I could get because I was always looking for something. A transistor for my stereo I needed to replace because it blew out. Or I needed, a wire or a cable or a component or some kind of thing. Or I needed batteries or whatever. I needed a new universal remote or whatever. Radio Shack was the place to be. Now, these next 3 are all box stores. They're all basically the same store, more or less, with minor modifications. I'm going to rank them in order of more importance. So, number 3 is Target. Number 2 is Walmart. They're basically the same store, whereas Walmart's where the poor people shop, and Target's where the people who aren't rich, but they want you to think they're rich, shop. Because they're too good for Walmart for whatever reason. But I prefer Walmart over Target. for the most part, just because they're bigger and they have a better selection and sometimes they have better prices. I like Target because they're generally cleaner than Walmart, and the employees aren't as overworked, so they're friendlier at Target. But again, it's all, I'm there for me. I'm there to get what I need, and Walmart's gonna have it, and if they do have it, because they're more likely to have it than Target, they're gonna have it for a better price than Target most of the time. And the number one on my top 25 retailers of all time, number one because we didn't have Walmart growing up. You already know what it is. I just basically told you without telling you. It's Kmart. I'll just save you the suspense. It's Kmart. I've done a whole video on Kmart. I used to work at Kmart. I shopped at Kmart like all the time. This was where we went. You know, they had the Olin Mills. Whenever it was time for pictures, you know, family pictures or portraits or whatever, we went to Kmart. Whenever it was getting our film developed at the photo department or whatever it was called, we went to Kmart. We were buying, videos, movies, VHS, DVDs, video games, VCRs, TVs, stereos, or whatever. It was usually Kmart. Clothes. We bought a lot of clothes at Kmart because they were, very inexpensive. And, they weren't like great quality clothes, comparable to Walmart. But, again, we didn't have a Walmart, so I grew up with Kmart, so I have an affinity for it. Unfortunately, Kmart is a thing of the past. And let's be real, the last 15 years that they were in business, they were on the decline. So, going to Kmart towards the end was miserable, and it was like, yeah, fuck this, I'm out. But in their heyday, they were the place to be. It was like the best place to go. It was like, screw Walmart, let's go to Kmart. Because, we didn't have a Walmart. Because I don't know where the hell Walmarts were back in the 80s and 90s, but they weren't where we were. We had Kmarts. Stay cool.